at Provost's office.
First, I just want to thank you guys all for driving all this way to come be part of this and for all of the effort that you have put in to being PEAs over the past 3 years. It's such an amazing accomplishment, particularly thinking about where we were 3 years ago when we were in this room and we didn't know what facilitation was and how we were going to get all these clinics on board. And if you think back to then, everything we've accomplished, you guys are sitting here pros, just like, oh, facilitation, I got that. I can train a new person. I know everything that goes on in a clinic. I can bring somebody on board. You guys have come through such an amazing journey to get here, and we wanted to bring all of you here to talk about it, to teach us. There are going to be a lot of decision makers like Dr. Duffy and like Tim in the room today. Speak of the devil, Dr. Crawford appears. There are going to be tons of people in the room today learning from your experiences. And I know that over the past 3 years, at least once, you've thought, ugh, why did they make that decision? If only they knew what I knew, they would have done it differently. So you'll see on the agenda, you're going to have an opportunity throughout the day to say, like, oh yeah, that happened to me, or you would not believe what happened to me, or I wish they would have learned what I learned. And we're going to go through and give you guys a chance to give us all of that information today. We're going to start with Dr. Duffy and Dr. Crawford kind of kicking us off, telling us opening remarks about H2O. I hope all of you guys signed in and got your agendas. Then we're going to do a short icebreaker. You guys are going to tell us the lessons you've learned throughout. You're going to get a chance to talk to us about crazy stories that you've experienced during your time as an H2O PEA. And then we'll talk a little bit about future projects, and you will get your awards at the end of the day. Do want to alert you that we have a GoPro up here up front that's going to be recording so that we can capture all of this very valuable information. If that bothers you, if you don't want to be filmed, let us know and we can not put it on you. But if you are presenting like today during the lunch hour when we tell stories, if you would come up here and tell your stories, that way you're not a teeny tiny person in the back of the room because the GoPro can't zoom in on you. And that's what I know. You guys know that there's a bathroom here, there's a bathroom down the hall, and then there's a bathroom outside of the office by the elevators. And yeah, we're just so glad you're here, and we're going to have a great day, and we're really excited that we're going to get to go through everything. So, without further ado, I have Dr. Crawford and Dr. Duffy. Your familiar faces.
Well, good morning, Dr.
Yes, good morning. I'm glad I made a dramatic entrance, right? Sorry, I just came from the provost
I
office.
hope we're convincing the provost of something important.
Well, he's the one that called the meeting, so so it was a whole different issue, somewhat related but unrelated to this particular celebration that I think is really exciting to me. Is the dreams that we had 4 years ago when I foolishly said, Jim, I don't want all that you work for to die, Jim Mold. He said, why don't you work on this little project with Dan Duffy? And I knew Dan from afar. I hadn't worked intimately with Dan for many years, but they had this little project called what obviously is now, as H2O. I forgot, what was our original name for it?
It was.
It wasn't H2O.
It was Dipcore. Disseminating.
Dipcore. Yeah, lovely name. Dipcore. Boy, that really got everybody going.
Yeah, it was disseminating and implementing patient-centered outcomes research in primary care settings.
Oh, you could remember that.
Yes, isn't that lovely? So we started off with Dipcore, but this grant that Dan and Jim really were the ones that put this together, but it was the dream that some of you knew and met with Jim Mold and worked with Jim Mold in the past. It was something I didn't want to have die, all of the work that he had, and that Dan had also been doing in other ways that he had been working with Dan, and I had the pleasure of stepping into the middle of that. The brains were truly Dan and Jim. Jim was the Wizard of Oz sitting off in North Carolina, behind the curtain, helping us. And we had, but the fabulous thing is this group of people that were assembled over the last, with the help of Tim and Meg, who had been working with Jim in other avenues. And I just, it to me was the joy of going out and working with you all to help our primary care doctors and other providers throughout the state to do this wonderful project. It wasn't just improving heart health, but it was making those connections, not only with the clinicians, but with you all, this team, this new professional. That was the other thing I remember hearing, was this new professional that had been developed, a practice facilitator. And we also are academic detailers that you all worked with over the years. This is a new professional avenue for people who are interested in improving healthcare to go out and work in these practices that you all did for many years during this, and that we're continuing with the new Do No Harm project that I've had the opportunity to go out now 4 times to start that process. So I've been very lucky to, again, go out and meet clinicians that are very interested in improving their practice based upon the efforts that you all have done, the goodwill, your goodwill ambassadors in many ways, to go out and help us as a system, whether it be with OU or somebody else, whether it's the OU here or OU in Tulsa. To me, it's more important that we are clinicians trying to help, and you all are clinicians helping our primary care colleagues improve the quality of care. So again, thank you all for everything that you all have done and making it enjoyable from my viewpoint. I know from Dan, he's been just an amazing engine, as it were. And despite many challenges that you've had, both personally and with all of the systems issues that we've had to deal with. There weren't any systems issues, right, Chuck or Tim? There weren't any.
Little.
Yeah, just little problems from H2O to all the acronyms were the thing that I loved. As you all probably know, I had to make up my own list of what I called acronymic hell, because I couldn't figure out what all these new acronyms you guys were throwing at me, and I imagine you all did too. With that, I'm finished, Dan. I don't.
Thank you. No, well, thank you, Steve. You have been a real, really wonderful colleague in working through this. I mean, I have never known anybody who is so equanimous in making changes at the very last minute to make things happen. And who knows, everybody in primary care in Oklahoma
Has to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it really is terrific. I must say, when Jim Mold asked me if I was interested in doing this, I said, I'm very interested, but I don't. Yeah, I can't. I'm retiring.
It's great retirement.
I can't do that. He said, no, you missed this. I'm retiring and taking care of my mother. You're going to do this. He has no way of sensing discomfort or anything in anybody else. You know, he just moves straight ahead.
Does anyone watch Big Bang?
There it is.
Sheldon? If anyone knows Sheldon, it's not quite as bad as Sheldon, but when I see it, I go, oh God, that's Jim Mold.
So Steve's already said that, well, first of all, I can't believe it's 3 years since we're back in this room, in this very room. And I got to tell you, when I came into this room, I don't know what you were feeling, but I thought, what have we gotten ourselves into? And by the way, I think we had already had the grant and were working for 6 months before we met in here to have the orientation.
It just felt like that. It wasn't quite that bad.
Well, what I didn't know when I was getting into this is the team of people, you all, and all the people who are not with us, who have been on this project. And in particular, Meg, who is a superstar in being able to handle all of the HR aspects that we didn't even know we needed to manage. And with her first conference on HR skills, which she gave beautifully at the beginning, and I thought, well, we really don't need that. And we really needed that. And then there was Tim. I mean, we would be in Leavenworth right now if it weren't for Tim.
Agreed.
Maybe we are.
Now only he will be in Leavenworth.
Well,
Instead of being in hell, we'd be in Lebanon.
We saw that video of the recent speaker that spent some time in
Yeah,
Lebanon.
Absolutely, it's a
Exactly.
beautiful place.
Yeah,
I related to that. But Tim has really maintained the budgetary aspects, the Office of Research Administration, and all kinds of things. We were plowing new ground with this. This is not what most people think of as research. In fact, up to this moment, we are still not sure whether we're doing research or quality improvement, and we've just given up. Who gives a damn at this point?
I'll say it one more time, if you're doing quality improvement right, it's actually research.
I have always agreed with that. So we've been smart to get the IRB involved, but we would never have made the IRB if it hadn't been for Joel Homko just staying on top of it and just telling us what to do. And
Yes.
we just did what she said. And we've been pretty good at that. Steve, Tim
We
and I.
listen well.
We listen and just say, when we don't say, explain why, we say, where do we sign? You know, just, where do we sign? And that's worked out really well. And then the other person on the team there is Tim and Steve and Meg and Jewel, who have been terrific. Another person that I've got to mention is Lee Kesey.
Oh, yeah.
Lee is a silent, pleasant force behind everything. You know, you said Jim was the Wizard of Oz pulling the strings. I honestly feel that Lee is, because she's, from my perspective, truly in the background. But when she texts or emails, you better respond. Because she'll keep at it until you do. And then the newcomer to the team actually was Chuck Tryon. And I had worked with Chuck for, about 5 years, 5 or 6 years.
2009.
When I was dean at the College of Medicine in Tulsa, let me back up. When I left Philadelphia, one of the last things we were doing in Philadelphia, I realized I had become a software developer without knowing it. And that was really problematic, because we had no software development skills whatsoever, but we needed the internet to be able to do things, and we kind of fell into it. But there was a young man I hired there who was a project manager, and he said, he sat me down before I left, and he said, when you go back to that medical school, the thing you have to do is teach young doctors about project management. He said, they don't know anything about it. The medical profession knows nothing about project management, and it is a new field that is absolutely necessary. You guys think you get things done by just having a good idea and getting a grant to fund it. I said, no, that's Jim Mold. And he said, what you have to do is you have to have a project that has a plan and a timeline and a measurable expectations and roles and responsibilities. And I said, who wants to do that? Then I met Chuck Tryon, who loves doing that and is really good at it and has written a book on it. And I watched him train Kim Johnson and other people, and we instituted a patient-centered medical home and a school of community medicine and a department of medical informatics and on and on and on. And we would never have done those without that project management. So I really have loved working with Chuck. But we come to the superstars, and the superstars are sitting here. I don't know how you did your job. I'm serious, I don't know. I kept looking at this as this is a research project where we're going to work together to discover how we do what we do. We will behave as if we know what we're doing.
I can tell you make it.
And we will begin to develop slides and conferences and talks and telephone patter that makes people think we know what we're doing. But quite frankly, we're going to build it as we go. Have you ever imagined flying a 747 while you're remodeling the whole thing in midair? Well, that's what this project was really like. And so by having some people with experience, like Crystal and Kara and Meg, who had experience in whatever this is that Jim Mold contrived, it helped. But they couldn't be everywhere. And they had their ideas of what needed to go on and were regularly shocked by what you were bringing back. It's kind of like having your puppy go out into the yard. You are really kind of surprised what they come back and bring to you.
But not like a cat that brings you a dead lizard, like a puppy that was like, something awesome, treasure. So we're clear.
Right.
No, there were occasional dead lizards.
A few of those practices that we won't mention, right?
But I think that, and what I'll end here with is what do we have now at the end of this 3 years? Well, I think we have an infrastructure team that's extraordinary. And we've already made the transition of applying it to another project and 10 others that we that are ongoing. The second thing we have is a new healthcare professional, and that's you. This practice facilitator is not exactly a teacher. It's not exactly a quality improvement officer. It's not exactly a data analyst. It's not exactly a public relations person. It's all of that. It's all of that put into one. And this new facilitator, which we're having trouble now deciding, are we a practice enhancement assistant or are we a practice facilitator? But it doesn't much matter. It does both. I haven't seen a single practice that was offended by having practice facilitation. And they, whether it's called facilitation or practice enhancement, probably doesn't matter, but it is a new healthcare professional. You will be grandfathered, if some of you don't even want to, well, you will be grandmothered,
Yes.
whenever the certification process for practice facilitation occurs. You'll write the rules on it. The second thing is this grant is actually a second of a two-part grant. There was the Impact. Impact. Who worked on Impact? Deanne and Tony worked on Impact. Impact was the first ARC grant, and the ARC wants us to keep remembering that ARC and Evidence Now, or Impact and Evidence Now are tied together. And Impact was the first grant. It was only $1 million, I think, over 3 years. And it was designed to get people, get an extension system started. Could we have an extension system? And that's where Deanne and Tony worked. Actually, the CHIOs came before the OFIC. So the extension system was built. OFIC kind of usurped the whole idea of the extension system in terms of activity, but the impact has continued. That's a miracle that a grant of that size is able to continue 4 more years. I mean, it's a total of 6 years. Right. And that's kind of a miracle. The thing that strikes me is you guys are a part of a movement that nobody knows about, and it's called the new CME, New Continuing Medical Education. And if you compare your experience of last Friday with what happens when you go into a practice, you know something now that other people really don't know. And that is that going to a lecture hall is fun, it creates networking, and you learn new information. But do you think anybody left that meeting with a different practice than they did when they walked into that meeting? What do you think? Do you think their practices are going to be different as a result of going to that meeting?
Maybe some.
Maybe some. Oh, you're so kind. The thing that we've turned up on the building blocks of primary care is the thing that you have accomplished, or at least you've observed happening, is leadership in the practices are engaged in quality improvement. Not everybody, but that was the single most important thing that changed. It changed a lot from pre to post. And the other thing is database quality improvement. Now, although databaseness is something that you would rather never hear again, I'm sure, because getting data out of the electronic health record, working with My Health, doing chart reviews, We swore we wouldn't do any of those things. And guess what? We had to do them all. And we have ended up contributing to this field probably more than anybody else in the Evidence Now project because we did all three and refused to not have data, even though we ended up with 24 practices that don't have it.
Can anyone name that tune? How many times have you heard that on calls?
Can you believe that is a text message tune?
That's a fellow classmate of mine from the Temple University class of 1968, before anybody in this room was born
before
except
Tennessee.
I was born.
No.
Yes.
68?
I was born in '66.
Okay. That's close. Anyway, we have to do our competency hearing before the state licensing board.
Not yet. I'm getting there. I just got my Medicare card.
Okay. Let me just say the last thing. We're going to talk about lessons learned over the project, and there are a lot of them, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say. What could we do better with? We could change our view of what primary care practice is. It is not the Marcus Welby. In fact, they're rare. We run into some of them. Courtney has Dr. Schaefer. Tony has Dr. Orendorff. I mean, each of you have your Marcus Welbys, but they're becoming less frequent. What we failed to recognize was health systems and how to relate OFIC to health systems. And that's the big challenge for Steve as he takes over this role. But we'll end up doing that. I'm going to stop at this point and just say it's been one of the, I can't imagine ending a very, very rich career in medicine. I cannot imagine ending it as a researcher in health services research. I mean, I never dreamed of any such thing, and that happened because of the largesse of ARC and your good work and willingness to do it. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.